It's Friday, the 12th of March 2021. Welcome to Fear and Greed Business Headlines, the business news you need in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. In today's headlines, 1 year since the pandemic was announced, the world is slowly getting back to normal. Plus, local travel stocks surge on the back of a big spending package from Canberra. BHP plans to reverse a decade-long trend and take on employees, not contractors. And the head of ASIO warns about China's influence in universities. Our lead story today, it's 1 year since the World Health Organization labelled the coronavirus a pandemic. COVID-19 has taken 2.62 million lives and 118 million infections have been reported. More than 25% of cases have been recorded in the United States, about the same number as the next three most affected countries, India, Brazil and Russia combined. The pandemic triggered the worst global recession since the Great Depression. All major economies, with the exception of China, went backwards at some point during 2020. The virus accelerated the use of technology at work and in homes. It changed where people work and how they socialise. Literally, things will never be the same. The number of cases peaked early this year and are now retreating. Vaccines have been given to 317 million people around the world. In the US, according to the New York Times, 10% of people are fully vaccinated. In Australia, that number is 0.4 of 1%. Many things, notably international travel, won't return to normal until at least next year. In Australia, the end of JobKeeper in 3 weeks will mark the finish of the federal government's biggest support package ever. And the economy still has to navigate that shock. But it's fair to say the worst is over. 2020 will be a year to remember, and 2021 is a year to look forward to. In overseas news, Wall Street hit a new record overnight. Around 80% of companies on the S&P 500 rose, and both the Nasdaq 100, which has underperformed recently, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average were higher. The jumps follow new figures showing fewer people requested unemployment benefits this week, and the passage of the Biden administration's $1.9 trillion stimulus package. The China Daily, the mouthpiece of the Communist Party, has slammed this weekend's historic Quad leaders meeting between Australia, the US, Japan and India. It said Washington was creating fresh friction with Beijing by holding the summit. And Warren Buffett's fortune has moved above $100 billion for the first time after the share price of his company Berkshire Hathaway hit a record high of $400,000 a share. Berkshire reported a $36 billion fourth quarter profit, triggering the spike. Locally, the response to the government's $1.2 billion tourism package yesterday was lukewarm at best. The decision to provide 800,000 holidaymakers with half-price flights to 13 regions across the country was criticised by pretty much everyone who wasn't one of those regions. Queensland got the biggest share of destinations, none of the capital cities got much at all, and business leaders called the package meagre and said more needed to be done. Travel stocks surged on the back of the government's announcement. Flight Centre was the biggest mover of the top 200 stocks, up more than 9%. Corporate Travel Management and Webjet were both about 4% higher, and Qantas and Sydney Airport were both up more than 2%. BHP wants more than 30,000 contractors that work on the company's mines to become permanent employees. The company hires around 80,000 workers in all, with about 40% being employees while the rest are contractors or labour hire. But Chief Executive Mike Henry said he wanted 80% to be permanent employees. He said to improve productivity at the group's mines, it was better to have employees. The main difference between the two, at least for workers, is that the hourly rate for employees is often lower, but they do get annual leave, sick leave and better career opportunities. BHP's decision is a reversal of a decades-long trend accelerated by the rise of tech companies to use contractors rather than employees across the economy. Sydney property prices have hit a record high, following in the footsteps of Brisbane, Canberra and Adelaide. Property data company CoreLogic said prices were being driven by top-end property sales in premium markets. The median Sydney dwelling value has hit a record of $895,933. The timetable for the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine in Australia has slipped, with second doses of the AstraZeneca jab potentially delayed until after October, thanks to a shortfall in doses and logistical challenges in the rollout. The head of Australia's intelligence network, the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, better known as ASIO, said up to 9 countries were trying to steal or cultivate sensitive research and technology from Australian universities and scientists. ASIO Director General Mike Burgess said there should also be greater clarity over what research should be off limits to foreign academics on national security grounds. This is a touchy issue. China's 1,000 Talents Plan gives researchers funding and the opportunity to commercialise their work in return for China getting access to their research. Universities need the money, but there are big risks in terms of intellectual property. That's the Fear and Greed business headlines for today. Make sure you've hit subscribe so you don't miss out. There's also more detail and plenty of other stories in today's full Fear and Greed podcast, including an interview with Monica Tu, who's built a business selling multi-million-dollar properties to Chinese Australians. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.